Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics. Coming at you, Bo and Brant. We're doing another remote recording, but we're going to keep pumping these divisions out, keep getting it out to you guys. Want to make sure you guys are getting ready because we are officially in draft season. It is August. We've had our first game. Kind of, if you classify that as a game. I watched about the first 3 minutes and then turned it back on in the second half to see some of the other guys. And we're getting into preseason now. It's starting to get real now. It's starting to come all together.
Yeah, you could call that Hall of Fame game a game in the sense that there was guys running around with pads and helmets on, right? But it didn't last too long with any big name players, as it never does in the preseason. But yeah, we're back. It's draft season.
Yeah. You got to see 2 series of Josh Jacobs, and that was probably the only real fantasy relevant player that was out there very long. Well, today we're going to cover the NFC West. I'm going to hit the Rams and the Seahawks, and you got the Niners and the Cards. So I think, are you ready to go, Bo?
Yeah, I do want to say real quick, Brant, it's good to be back, but the timing couldn't be worse as I have to vacate my house due to my wife's daycare. And sitting outside, I've currently got a helicopter that's doing some crop nesting on some fields near here, buzzing us. So if you hear a loud noise, that's just a helicopter. I'm not in Ukraine right now.
All right, as you finish that up, we definitely caught that background noise coming through. So I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. I'm going to get us kicked off with the defending champs of the NFC West in the Los Angeles Rams. Unfortunately, that means that my team is not the defending champs, so I don't get to talk about Seattle first. But we'll go over the Rams. And right out the gate, I'm going with my bust is Cam Akers. He's going as the 30th player off the board in most drafts. He's going over players of the likes of T. Higgins, Aaron Jones, and David Montgomery. Those are 3 names that I really like better than Cam Akers this year. And I know that you're sitting back probably chuckling because I believe it was just 2 years ago how high I was on this man that I was willing to use a first-round draft pick on him last offseason prior to the torn Achilles. So he's going just outside of an RB1. He's going as the RB14, I think. Yeah, the 14th RB off the board. So you're taking this guy. If you went 2 wide receivers first, you're taking this guy to be your RB1, or you're taking this guy to be your RB2. And I'm sorry, he returned from a torn Achilles after 6 months. And that torn Achilles is a 9 to 12 month recovery. I know that he's got the off season and everything else. He gets to come back, but that's probably one of the worst injuries a running back can have. And when he came back so early, he just didn't look as explosive. Prime example, I'll knock out the first game, Week 18, when he did come back because he only had 5 carries there. So I won't even take those stats into consideration. I'm going to take into the playoffs where they played, where he saw. Where'd I have it? 67 attempts. He averaged 2.6 yards per touch and had 0 touchdowns. And that includes a game against. Now I know it was against the Tampa Bay Bucks, but he saw 20 plus touches in that game and still couldn't really do a whole lot with them. So it's a guy that I just can't trust to be an RB1 because even when he was out, this is going to bring me into my sleeper here. I'm going to run it all together. Even when he's out, Darrell Henderson was very, very serviceable. In 13 games last year, Darrell Henderson finished as the RB27 in all PPR leagues. And, he averaged 4.6 yards per carry. I see your chuckle over there as we're chit-chatting back and forth. And Darrell Henderson's going as the 143rd player off the board. So you're telling me almost 100 picks later, I can throw a dart at Darrell Henderson, and if something happens to Cam Akers coming back from this devastating injury, I get a starting running back because Sony Michel's now out. So it's really just those 2. Kerryon Williams, who they did draft, who I absolutely loved coming out of this draft, it is already done pretty much, missing all of training camp. I don't think he makes an impact in this backfield at all this year. So you're looking at Akers and Henderson are the only 2 guys. They're splitting 50-50 work at training camp right now. nobody's taking over the lead back. So 100%, I'm not taking the risk of Cam Akers that early in a draft when later on down the road, I can throw that dart at Darrell Henderson, who in my mind is probably a more serviceable pass-catching back than Cam Akers is. So tread lightly if you do trust Cam. You've got to tread lightly. That's a guy that you just can't put all your faith into.
Yeah, Brant, I'm chuckling because this is the same argument you and I had last year for several weeks leading up to draft season, where I was fading Cam Akers due to Darrell Henderson, and now how the tables have turned, you're starting to see the light of day, and I'm proud of you. Just a little bit of a late learner there, but you're spot on. Obviously Cam Akers. The excitement was real when he come out of Florida State. That backfield was pretty much wide open to anybody after Todd Gurley left, and Cam Akers looked really good that 1 year, and then not so much since. And Darrell Henderson has been nothing short of spectacular when he's given the chance. That's just a backfield that if I own one, I'd have to own both. But yeah, if I couldn't get both, I'd be much more comfortable with Darrell Henderson at his ADP than I would be with Cam Akers at his. So you're spot on there with me.
Absolutely, and that rolls us back to that argument that we had last year leading up to the torn Achilles. Is apparently I didn't dig deep enough, but you were right. I'll say it. It's like trying to tell my wife that she's right. I don't want to admit it, but I'll tell you you're right. Henderson outproduced him in almost every aspect of the game during Cam Akers' rookie year. So I just don't see really how missing an entire year with the torn Achilles is going to make you better than Darrell Henderson. You're an equal right now, and unless you get back to the explosive way you were in Florida State, I don't see how you take over that backfield. So I'm going to jump into my stud of the Rams, and this is a cop-out, easy way out here. So we're going to go with Cooper Kupp. There's not much to say. He's Stafford's go-to target. He's Stafford's breakfast buddy. He's Stafford's lunch buddy. He's a Triple Crown winner. He's going to be a PPR stud, no matter where you. Now, I'm not telling you to go jump over Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris and all that. I do see a little regression coming for Cooper Kupp, but there's no way that man does not finish inside the top 10 of PPR. He's a safe guy as long as he's healthy, and I mean, there's nothing else you can really say about Cooper Kupp besides he's going to be that guy in LA. Anything else you want to add to that one?
Yeah, my 2 cents on Cooper Kupp is I actually think Allen Robinson will hurt Cooper Kupp's value much more significantly than OBJ or Robert Woods ever did. So I do actually see a way, and it's an outside way, but I see a way for Cooper Kupp to miss the top 10. But it would have to be a complete resurgence of Allen Robinson. And not to say I don't think that happens, but like you said, the chemistry is too good right now between Kupp and Stafford, so it's probably more likely than not that he does finish still inside the top 10. But Allen Robinson, in my mind, is a threat to that.
Absolutely. Which, thanks for that, segued into my breakout player is Allen Robinson. This is a man that has 3 top 10 finishes in PPR leagues. Could you tell me who any of his real quarterbacks were besides Justin Fields for a little bit last year before he decided he really didn't want to play for the Bears no more? This is by far the best quarterback Allen Robinson has had in his entire career. And this guy's he's going in the 8th round of 8. His ADP is an 8th round draft pick. So this guy could almost become the easiest and biggest steal of most redrafts and dynasty leagues. He's only 28 years old. He's playing with the best quarterback and one of the most pass-happy offenses in the NFL. There's just, I mean, he's an upgraded version, like you said. He's an upgraded version of Robert Woods, and I think his value is, as of right now, from what we've seen, his value is even better than that of OBJ when he went over to the Rams. So Allen Robinson's a guy that I'm stealing in any redraft leagues. any dynasty leagues that I'm sitting there in the 8th, 9th round and Allen Robinson sitting there staring at me, this is a guy who's going outside of wide receiver 3 range as the 40th wide receiver off the board. Stafford's good enough to, Stafford's good enough to support 2 wide receivers in that offense. So I absolutely love that this guy, like I said, he's going outside the wide receiver 3 range, and I don't see a way that he doesn't finish even a low-tier wide receiver 2, maybe a high-tier wide receiver 3. This guy could easily be one of the biggest steals in all drafts during this offseason.
Blake Bortles, by the way, is another great, fantastic quarterback that Allen Robinson got to play with.
Yeah, amazing, phenomenal. So that really sums it up for the Rams. Like I said, I kind of put my sleeper and the sleeper and the stud kind of went together hand in hand. So I mean, the Rams offense is going to be a fun one to really watch this year. That backfield is just something that I don't want to touch. The wide receivers, I'm not a big fan of passing on the wide receivers there. So I mean, with the Rams, just enjoy that offense. Get yourself a little piece of it.
Yeah, Brand, I completely agree. Let's talk about another offense that was really high-paced, high-flying, if you will, last year in that division. We'll go ahead and move right on into the Arizona Cardinals here. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the stud here, because this one to me is probably the easiest portion of this that I had for the Cardinals. And we're going to go ahead and go with Trey Lance, much in a similar way to the way that
you got the wrong team
Lamar
there,
Jackson.
Buddy.
What's that?
You said the Cardinals, then you just said Trey Lance.
I'm sorry, Kyler Murray. I'm excited about Trey Lance, and I'm going to get into him later. But we're going to talk about Kyler Murray now. Kyler Murray, is a guy that I get excited about for fantasy in a very similar way that I do to Lamar Jackson. I have DeAndre Hopkins, as you know, in a Dynasty League, Brant, and I much preferred the version of DeAndre Hopkins with Deshaun Watson to what I got last year. But again, that could be more of the offensive flow with the Cardinals and more of where DeAndre Hopkins is at in his career now. But Kyler Murray is that guy, that when he takes off with his legs, it gets exciting, right? And so if you look back at his 2020 season, which was really, his great big year, right? He threw for 26 touchdowns that year and added another 11 on the ground. When you can get double-digit touchdowns out of a single position of one player, that's really, really awesome, especially for a quarterback. Again, a quarterback's position that if you have one of those top, even 8, 9 guys maybe, it's something you don't ever have to think about with your position there, and you get to spend more time focusing on other parts of your roster. So for that reason, I've got Kyler Murray as my stud. We'll move right on into my breakout here, and my breakout is a rookie that I have coming into Arizona this year in the way of tight end Trey McBride, coming out of Colorado State University. With Trey McBride in the tight end position, Brant, it's been much of the way here in the recent memory, at least, of tight ends coming on and having a pretty good impact, like right out the gates, right? Obviously, you had Kyle Pitts last year, you had Pat Freiermuth last year, and I expect this class to have some guys come out and do the same thing from that tight end position, and Trey McBride's one that I could see doing that. In this year's class, in a lot of people's mind, Trey McBride was the tight end one, and Trey McBride in his collegiate career was pretty impressive. Last year at Colorado State, he had 90 receptions for 1,121 yards, averaged 12.5 yards a catch, and only had 1 touchdown last year, which isn't great. But in the Arizona offense that has Zach Ertz, who's not getting any younger, it wouldn't shock me at all to see this guy come on and get some run as the tight end 2, maybe give Zach Ertz some breaks in between time. And if this guy gets a rhythm with Kyler Murray down in the red zone or even across the middle of the field, when they're just driving the ball, this guy's value is going to go up. And it used to be back in the day that the rule of thumb was with wide receivers, they took about 2 years to really break onto the scene, develop, and get up to game speed. And tight ends, it used to be about 3 years, and that's kind of gone with these the caliber of athletes we're getting out of colleges and stuff now. And I really think Trey McBride's a guy that could catch on really quick, and could burst onto the scene not only just this year, but early and often.
Absolutely. Like you alluded to, that Ertz isn't getting any younger. And they're missing 6 games is Hopkins, so McBride's probably going to get a chance to run out there. They also lost Christian Kirk. They have a lot of vacated targets in that offense, and I definitely could see him taking a small step this year and a giant leap come next year. Because most tight ends don't break out in their first year in the NFL, but this has got a guy that definitely. You could see getting a decent amount of run throughout the beginning of the year. And and I'm going to run back to your Kyler Murray. As you see everything coming out about the whole Call of Duty and everything else on the Kyler Murray situation, don't let that scare you off too much of him. His ADP is too good to be passing on Kyler Murray with his rushing upside. It's too good to just let sit there and pass up.
Yeah, no doubt, Brant, no doubt. And I'm going to move right on into my sleeper here, and this is a guy I think that's going to be a beneficiary, if you will, of Kyler Murray having a good year, and that's Rondale Moore. Listen, I know everybody's hyped up about Marquise Brown coming to town, and everybody's talking about Marquise is going to explode those first 6 weeks without DeAndre Hopkins. It can't just be Marquise Brown doing everything. They lost Christian Kirk this year. They did re-sign AJ Green, but Rondale Moore is coming into his second season, and last year wasn't a great rookie year for him. He finished with 1 touchdown, 64 targets, 54 receptions, 435 yards. So not a great rookie year, but this guy was out of Purdue, was somebody that a lot of people were really excited about when he came out. And his freshman year at Purdue back in 2018, he had 114 receptions for 1,258 yards, 12 touchdowns. So he was really drafted based on that freshman year. He did have 2 more seasons at Purdue where he kind of dropped down a little bit, and there were some injuries that took place and played a factor into that. But Rondale Moore's a guy that if with DeAndre Hopkins out, Marquise Brown drawing the ones, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see this guy come out and put up an 800-yard season with maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns. And for where Rondale Moore finished last year and what Rondale Moore accomplished last year, that'd be a really good season. And again, I still think when DeAndre Hopkins comes back after that 6-game suspension, he's going to step right back into that one role regardless of who was doing what. So it's going to be really a race in my mind between Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown to develop that early chemistry with Kyler. And again, I know Kyler and Marquise Brown played together at Oklahoma, but Rondale Moore was also with Kyler last year, so there's some chemistry there too. But again, I think whichever one of them builds that rapport and Kyler gets really comfortable with is the one that you're going to see to continue to do that once DeAndre Hopkins comes back. And right now, I'm leaning towards Rondale Moore just for the simple fact that I think you're going to see Marquise Brown draw on the ones there.
Absolutely, and both receivers are explosive, and if you have them bonus plays of the 40, 50-yard touchdowns or receptions, both these guys are a guy that I would love to own in Brown and Moore. And I see Moore as more of a PPR upside than Brown because you're going to see more getting. I think you're going to see more getting the screen passes and the quick dump off routes and the short slants. And this guy, like I said, he's so explosive. He could easily turn any of those into a touchdown at any time. So yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there with Moore. I'm more excited for Moore than I am a Hollywood Brown this year.
Yeah, and so Right, again, perfect segue here, and it always trips me out, and I know it trips you out when we're this in sync, which means there's bound to be an argument coming at some point in fantasy football. May not be on the podcast this week, but we may come to blows at work this week over a name that we disagree on. I don't know, but when we're this in sync, things happen. So let's talk about my dud for the Cardinals, and that is none other than Marquise Hollywood Brown. Okay, and my rationale and reason behind this is, again, simply just due to the fact that, people are way over the top excited about Marquise Brown after that trade, due to DeAndre Hopkins' suspension. Had DeAndre Hopkins not been suspended, I don't think this would be making that big a headways. But again, let's talk about the quarterback play. Kyler Murray is a very exciting quarterback for fantasy. The same way Lamar Jackson is a very exciting quarterback for fantasy. They do great things with their legs. They make plays happen, but they're not great at passing the football. Okay, they leave a lot to be desired when it comes to, what we get from our wideouts that play on those teams. Like I said, DeAndre Hopkins was frustrating at times last year. There'd be times where he'd finish as a top 10 wideout on the week, and there'd be other times where it's like he'd fall off and he's non-existent. So right now, Marquise Brown is being drafted as the 62nd overall player. So again, in 12-man leagues, you're seeing him go in the 5th round. And, I think the problem for me with that is that you're drafting a guy that high that I don't expect to continue to be the one when DeAndre Hopkins comes back. And Kyler Murray's not the guy that I look at as substantiating, 3 top 30 wide receivers like you could see out of like Joe Burrow potentially, or, even 2 top 20 and where like guys like Kirk Cousins or Joe Burrow can do. I just don't expect to see that from Kyler Murray because of the way he does use his legs. And, again, last year, Marquise Brown had 146 targets for 91 receptions in that Baltimore offense. Okay, I don't expect to see him to see 146 targets in Arizona. I just don't see it happening. And so I'm really taking a pass on Marquise Brown this year. I don't want him, mainly because of where his price tag is at. Brant, if you could think back in our original Dynasty League that you and I were a part of, the value and the trade that was given up to get Marquise Hollywood Brown this year was a premium, and I just don't see it. I want to see what that offense looks like when all of DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, and Rondale Moore are on the field before I'm willing to go after a guy like Marquise.
Absolutely. The first 6 weeks is that's the issue. Is normally in fantasy the first 6 weeks is kind of the outlier for your players. How am I really going to look going into the rest of the season? Am I going to be able to make that playoff push? Well, if you draft anybody outside of Kyler Murray in that offense, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, you're not going to be able to see that because one of the best wide receivers in the NFL is out for the first 6 weeks, unfortunately. And he's going to come back in, and he already has the chemistry with Kyler Murray. He's going to change that entire offense when he gets back. He's going to change all the defensive schemes when he comes back. So it's really hard to judge those players when that happens, when your best guy is really missing the first part of the season. So, Arizona is just one of those teams that I love the upside of that team, but I don't know how I feel about wanting to wait for them.
Yeah, Brant, the hard part for me was to pick a dud in this offense because I felt like I could have went a number of ways. I felt like James Conner would have been an easy one to put there. I feel like Zach Ertz could have been an easy one to put there. Heck, for that matter, DeAndre Hopkins would have been an easy one to put there. There's just too many names that could be a dud, and it's really kind of scary when you look at it because it's like maybe that's the new offense that I'm going to shy away from just because I don't know how it's going to work out or how it's going to look. And there's so many big, high prolific names in that offense. But again, I just, like you alluded to, until you can see them all on the field, which, you're really not going to get the true view of what this offense is going to be until about week 8 after DeAndre Hopkins gets some time to be back in that scheme, running with the ones and back in that game speed. There goes the helicopter again. I know you hear it. But yeah, it's going to be one of those things where the offense is going to take some time to gel when everybody comes back. And so that's really scary because that playoff push that you had alluded to and we're talking about is going to be right around that time where we really start to see what the Arizona offense is going to be, because everybody should be on the field at that point.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to roll me straight into my next team. So that jumps me into the Seattle Seahawks, who finished at the near the bottom, and it was a painful season for me as a Seahawks fan. But I'm going to jump straight into this. My bust, is going to be DK Metcalf. The man, he's being drafted as a 12th overall wide receiver off the board. So that's wide receiver run one territory in a run-heavy offense and a run-first offense with, let's just say, a mediocre quarterback to be nice, regardless of who starts. And in the weeks that Geno started last year, DK only saw targets of 7, 5, and 6 in those 3 weeks where Geno started. I know, short sample size. But he only finished as a wide receiver 1 in one of those weeks, and that was solidified by a 2-touchdown performance along, I believe, was a deep 48-yard touchdown on blown coverage where he was standing there wide open. So I just don't see how he can produce at a wide receiver 1 level in a run-heavy offense with a mediocre quarterback, with 19 different tight ends that we probably have on our roster, as you always tell me. I just don't see how he can live up to a wide receiver 1 number. I just can't see it. I don't see in the relevancy of Seattle supporting a top 12 wideout. And it's not saying, DK won't be good, but you're telling me at a wide receiver 1, I've got or at the end of the first, middle of second, I have to draft DK Metcalf. I think I'm just gonna have to swing away on that one and bypass on it. I just can't trust him as my wide receiver 1. So I'll jump straight.
It's fair, Brant, because last year, obviously, with both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, quarterback play was never an issue with Russ, right? And with Russ out of town and Drew Lock and Geno Smith competing for the starting job, it's real easy to fade those wideouts. Jimmy G, if you guys end up, if the 49ers let Jimmy G go and you guys end up able to sign Jimmy G, that may be the saving grace for this pass catching core there in Seattle. But otherwise, Brand, I completely agree with you. DK's value definitely takes a hit, and as does any other pass catcher with the loss of Russell Wilson there in Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings me to the whole point of a stud. So we've talked about a stud for every single team. Who's the stud on this team? Who's the stud on that team? Well, there's not one in Seattle. There is 0 players on this offense that I 100% would trust to produce fantasy relevance numbers week in and week out. And if you honestly want me to pick a player I got to trust Michael Dixon, our punter, because I feel like he may be on the field more than a whole lot of players. So I tried. I've been sitting here for the last 2 weeks, who's going to be my stud for this team? There isn't one. Back with Russell, you could have talked about Russ. With DK, you could have talked about with Russ and DK. But yeah, I just can't find it. Which that's going to roll me into I'm going to go to my sleeper, because this is just unnecessary for it to be a sleeper. Is Tyler Lockett. He's going as the 116th player off the board. The man's finished the last 4 seasons inside the top 20 as wideouts. He has one of the most trusted hands in the NFL for catching. I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to go up and out-jump a lot of wide receivers or a lot of corners, but Tyler Lockett is just he's always been Russ's most trusted guy. He's always been the safety blanket for Russ. I know Russ is out of town, but Pete's still there, and I'm sorry. giving me Tyler Lockett in the 10th round in most drafts, I really feel like Lockett could end up being the safety valve, safety blanket there for any of the mediocre quarterbacks that we're starting. Even if, as you alluded to, even if Jimmy G comes to town, I think that Lockett he's the most veteran tight end on the team. He's the most veteran skill position player on the team. I really feel like you getting, like I said, Lockett in the 10th round. That's I don't know how you're talking about a guy that's finished inside the top 20 as a sleeper. But yeah, that's my sleeper. Is Tyler Lockett. That's a guy that I would love to throw a dart late in drafts and everything else on.
Yeah, it's funny that you leave out the stud from the team and then talk about a guy in the last 4 seasons who's been a top 20 wide receiver. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, and again, it all goes back to that quarterback issues, and it'll be interesting because there'll still be value from Seattle for fantasy. It's just going to be, is it Rashad Penny this week? Is it Kenneth Walker this week? Is it DK Metcalf this week? Is it Tyler Lockett? It's just going to be one of those things where I don't think you see sustained success fantasy-wise for any of those 4 guys, but I think each week one of those 4 guys will be, up there in their fantasy value at that position for the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's going to bring me into my breakout. I already talked about how this is a run-heavy, run-first offense. My breakout is Rashad Penny. He's taken all the Team 1 snaps in camp. He's he's back to being healthy for now. But I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. That's going to really bring up something here. He finished as a top 10 back in the last 4 weeks of the season. He was averaging 19 fantasy points per game. So, I mean, we've already seen what he's capable of. He's probably the most explosive player on the Seahawks. Now, we talk about his health. Well, during his during his injury time while he was down in Seattle, and we brought in Adrian Peterson was actually working hand in hand with Rashad Penny on working on how to take hits, how to avoid the contact, how to lessen the chance of injury. And then you saw Penny come back, and he actually got to play more than 1 or 2 games. And I really think that he took a lot of the veteran help from Adrian Peterson to heart. So I really could see this being Penny's real breakout year. And unfortunately, it's going to come as in his 4th season. But I really feel like Penny's going to take that backfield, and I don't think an injury will be the only thing that's going to make him relinquish this. And I'm sorry, in the Seattle offense, he's probably seeing 20-plus carries a game. Because we got to keep our defense off the field, because I mean, we all saw how many points they can give up last year. So yeah, Penny's a guy that I absolutely love snaking in all my drafts late. I actually traded for him in the offseason of this Dynasty league. In Dynasty, he does have 1 year left, but I think that if he can prove to stay healthy this year, I really feel like he's going to stay in Seattle.
Yeah, Penny's one of those that, the talent's definitely there, obviously, right? Dating back to his first round draft capital. It's just been a matter of getting him to stay healthy, and the hamstrings have been issues. And, but the door is completely wide open there in Seattle with Chris Carson and his neck injury. And, they brought in Kenneth Walker, and everybody's reaching for him and real excited for him. And I do think Kenneth Walker ultimately ends up being the guy in Seattle. But is that a matter of because Penny gets hurt, or is it a matter of because Kenneth Walker takes over and actually does well? I don't know, because if Penny doesn't get hurt, I think it's going to be hard for Walker to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Seattle's also one of those teams that, like we already alluded to with DK, if it's not later in the draft, I'm not investing much into this offense. I'm investing my bench spots in this offense right now because you alluded to the possibility of Jimmy G coming to Seattle, but the odds are all pointing in favor of Seattle drafting a new QB next year. So it's going to be a whole new offense. Pete's not getting any younger. You and me have joked about the fact that he may not even realize that he's still coaching with how old he's up there in age. Love you, Pete. Yeah, I feel like it's time for a complete overhaul on the Seahawks, and unfortunately I'll have to sit there and go through the rebuilding years of them. But I'm ready for it, and when it comes to fantasy-wise, Seattle's in a rebuild. They may not admit it, but they are in a rebuild. So kind of fade this offense and tread very lightly with your expectations.
Yeah, it's tough when you have to talk about your team and fantasy expectations because, if you can think back to the first week when we broke down the NFC South, I obviously wanted to be able to have a lot of great things to say about my Atlanta Falcons, and it was very similar to your take here on your Seattle Seahawks. But, Brand, if you're ready, let's wrap this division up. Let's move right on into the 49ers, and let's get into this. And I'm going to start this one out with my stud. And this is one, Brant, that I'm going to be really high on here. And, thinking back to last year, this is a guy that I wanted him everywhere I could get him last year. On my 55 breakout candidates that I probably mentioned in the offseason, this one I got right, and I was really proud of it. And it's none other than Deebo Samuel. And listen, last year Deebo did some things that we've not seen before. The 59 rushing attempts and having 8 rushing touchdowns last year to go along with 6 receiving touchdowns was just insane. And this guy, the number that really pops off the page for me with Deebo is his average yards when he caught the ball, and that was 18.2 yards. So you're telling me that this guy gets the ball in his hands and he's picking up a first down every single time he does it, and then 8 more yards. There's value to that, and any intelligent head coach is going to find a way to get the ball in his hands, and Kyle Shanahan may be one of the smartest head coaches in the National Football League. Listen, I've got some bitter feelings towards Kyle Shanahan. The way he left Atlanta when we were at our weakest moment after losing the Super Bowl in the fashion that we did, and taking over the San Francisco head coaching gig. But listen, the one thing you can say about him is the man's intelligent. And, Deebo all offseason was, I want to be paid like a wide receiver. I don't want to run the ball. Well, in training camp, Deebo's lining up in the backfield already. So I would say that's not something we need to worry about. They're going to find a way to get the ball in Deebo's hands, and it's pretty electric when he does that. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on my stud or my next spot, which is going to be my breakout, and that's going to be Trey Lance, who I alluded to earlier. Trey Lance is a guy that I'm extremely excited about. I think he's got the same or similar mobility to that of Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, who we talked about in length earlier. But he also has a great arm, okay? And that gives me reason to be excited. Now there is some hesitations, obviously, about the school he went to in college, with North Dakota State. But, I mean, the guy threw 1 interception in, his 3 years of collegiate football. Granted, he only played a few games his junior year there in 2020 before he came out. But in 2019, he was electric. 28 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. This is a guy that can come in and light the scoreboard up quick, and he's got tons of weapons, right? He's got George Kittle, he's got Deebo Samuel, he's got Brandon Ayuk. There's just plenty of names there, and this is one that I'm very excited about, and I think he's going to take the reins, and it's not going to be a thing that ever gets questioned again. So I'm really excited about him here.
Yeah, we saw what Trey Lance is capable of in the few games that he was able to step in and play, and we saw his rushing upside in the design plays for him. So yeah, Trey Lance is definitely a guy that I know that you've been excited for since he came out. I mean, I'm pretty sure you drafted him in our dynasty.
I did.
And have stashed
rookie
him.
draft.
Yeah,
rookie draft. Yes.
And you've stashed him, and you've held on to him, and I'm pretty sure you've kind of come out and maybe not stated it. I believe you quoted Ted DiBiase that everyone's got a price, but his is a little higher than it probably should be in your eyes. And I definitely see why, going back and looking at that. And with Deebo, Deebo's a guy that, like you alluded to, he was very, very smart with his contract. He made sure that I'm getting paid both ways, and I absolutely love I don't know if I really like his ADP, but I think that he may be able to live up to that hype. I'm actually excited to see how this offense works under Trey Lance. And so yeah, this is those are two players that I'm actually kind of excited to see. I don't own any stock, I don't think, in any of the Niners, but I'm definitely willing to sit back and watch and see how this goes, because this could be a very intriguing young team to invest in a lot of in the future years.
Yeah, so let's talk about the investing in young players, okay? And we're going to go into my dud here, but my dud and my sleeper are going to be combined with one another in a way. My dud is going to be Elijah Mitchell, and I know this is going to be one that a lot of people are going, well, wait a minute, Elijah Mitchell looked great last year. And, you're right. Elijah Mitchell did look really good last year. 207 attempts last year. He had 963 yards, averaged 4.7 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns to go along with that, and then had 19 receptions, 137 yards, and 1 touchdown. It's good numbers on the surface, but here's the thing, right? We talked about Kyle Shanahan, and the one thing that's always true about Kyle Shanahan is running back-wise, he likes to run guys in and out, and he likes to feed the hot hand. Okay, and we've seen that in the past with guys like, Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, and the plethora goes on. JaMychal Hasty, Jeff Wilson Jr. I mean, all these guys have gotten run and carries in that backfield. And, a lot of people are really excited about Elijah Mitchell. And to me, the excitement on Elijah Mitchell, Brant, is a lot like pooping your pants and being excited about it because they weren't your favorite pair of pants. Okay? That's kind of my analogy on Elijah Mitchell. And it's not to say that Elijah Mitchell's not capable. It's just I don't expect this trend of Elijah Mitchell being a feature back in San Fran to continue. Again, you've still got Trey Sermon, who, again, he got himself into a little bit of a dog bed, if you will, or the doghouse, if you will, with Kyle Shanahan last year, but he's still on the roster. They drafted Davis Price out of LSU. They still have JaMychal Hasty. They still have Jeff Wilson Jr. There's still guys on this roster. And I promise you, Elijah Mitchell is not more talented than, guys like Raheem Mostert were, or guys like Tevin Coleman were. And those guys all still got cycled through that backfield, right? So for me, again, to put large amounts of stake in saying, yeah, I've got my RB2 on my roster solidified because I have Elijah Mitchell there, to me, that just makes me really uncomfortable. Again, much in the way it would if I pooped my pants and I was sitting in that poop, I'd be very uncomfortable. I just think there's, there's better options. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if, halfway through the season we're saying, hey, who'd have thought JaMychal Hasty was going to be getting as much run as he is, or Jeff Wilson Jr. is getting it again, or, what happened to Trey Sermon? Again, last year in the draft, Trey Sermon was drafted, 3 rounds in front of Elijah Mitchell. I don't think Elijah Mitchell is the most talented back in that field. He just happened to be playing really good at the right times last year. And again, I think the sleeper for this team then has to become whichever of the 8 running backs steps up. Okay, San Fran's running back situation is very similar in the way that Seattle's tight end used to be. There was 85 of them on the roster, and when they narrow it down to the 56 man, it's like or the 52, whatever it is. We got to figure this out. Let's move all these tight ends to different positions. We'll put them at the defensive line, a safety back here, maybe a backup kicker. That way we can roster these guys. It's the same way with the San Fran backfield, Brant, and it's. We have all these guys on the roster, and obviously injuries happen. But again, if you see Trey Sermon get a chance, and Trey Sermon gets 6 carries and has 50 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's going to get more carries than 6 the next week. Okay, and who does that cut into? Well, it cuts into Elijah Mitchell, and this is a really passionate take I'm giving you right now, and I own 0 stakes in the San Fran backfield, so. It's purely observation for me at this point, but I just that is one player on this team that I'd be fading at his ADP just because Kyle Shanahan has been a head coach for long enough now that we know he doesn't just run out one running back. Similarly to the way Bill Belichick does with New England, you never know who the guy's going to be. Same way with Kyle Shanahan. I just don't trust Elijah Mitchell.
Absolutely. I've been preaching that too. Is Mitchell got his run because Sermon got put in the doghouse. He got banged up. He was having fumbling issues. And then you go and you add more stock that I believe Davis Price was around the same draft capital as Elijah Mitchell, if not more, in the NFL draft. So, excuse me. Then you add Deebo Samuel in there too, taking carries and getting that in his contract that he takes so many carries, gets so many yards. It's absolutely crazy how much they use in the backfield. And we saw that all the way back to, I believe, Shanahan back in Atlanta. We saw him use multiple backs in his offensive scheme. And you alluded to it perfectly, is you never know which hot hand you're going to see that week. Because if Sermon comes, we'll say Mitchell starts out that week and has a fumble, and then all of a sudden Sermon comes in and he's ripping off 10, 15-yard runs. Well, guess what? You're stuck with that negative points from Mitchell because he's not getting back in that game. So absolutely, I don't like that backfield. I don't touch that backfield. We just did a huge 20-some round fantasy draft, and it took me almost to like the 25th round before I took Trey Sermon, before I was willing and semi-comfortable with touching somebody in that backfield. It's just I don't know how week to week it's going to pan out for the San Francisco 49ers, and I hate it. I hate it as a Seahawks fan too, because I don't know what to expect whenever we play them. Are we going to, expect expect which running back we're going to expect? And so, yeah, the Niners are just, I absolutely love the quarterback situation. Debo, I love Ayuk. But even in camp, this is what I wanted to hit. Even in camp, we're not hearing any running backs' names stand out. We heard some people praise how Trey Sermon looks, but that's about the only bit of news that I've heard out of the Niners camp, according to the running backs.
Yeah, I haven't again invested a lot of time looking into what the guys are doing there, because I don't own any of them, obviously. But Brand, I did want to point out, Tyrion Davis Price was drafted with the 29th pick in the third round. Okay, so that's pretty high draft capital on this guy. When you could, the fact that Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall, if I'm not mistaken here, were the two backs taken before this guy came off the board.
Correct.
So obviously San Fran sees something here, had a reason to go get this guy. Granted, San Fran's offensive line and defense are both, fairly talented, and there's not a whole lot of holes there. But I can't imagine that if they thought Elijah Mitchell was the guy, that they couldn't have used a third-round pick on something better suited for their team. So again, it further makes me confident in the fact that Kyle Shanahan wants to run multiple backs through this offense.
Absolutely. There's a lot of teams in this division to tread lightly with, and I feel like this is one of the biggest divisions that we broke down that actually had a lot of players that aren't very trustworthy. We went over a few other divisions that were just kind of cut and dry. So, but I think that about sums it up for this division. We'll get back at you next week with another AFC division. And as always, stay hungry.
And stay fat, my friends.